Hey there, hope everyone is doing well after the wild weather at the end of last week. Thanks for your patience as I navigated extensions, making sure everything was taken care of. So where that puts us right now, and some of you may know that in addition to the school closures, we had network outage, power outage, all kinds of stuff on Friday. So I'm still working on stage one. I plan to have all of those back to you all by tomorrow afternoon. So I'm working on those just as hard and as quickly as I can. So for this week, I'm going to extend the deadline for the ad evaluation one extra day. So they will be due 4 p.m. on Friday. I'm going 4 p.m. so that I can go ahead and get started on those. I'm giving feedback on stage one in the order that they came in. So those of you who turned them in early, most of you have them back, and then the ones who return them in close to the original deadline, that's sort of where I am. And any coming in after the original deadline will be the last ones. So I'm plowing through those, but still trying to give plenty of time and attention to everybody. So hang in there and I will get them back to you by tomorrow afternoon. When you get them back, please be sure that you open them up and you look at the comments. I've put comments on the documents themselves, and in some cases, I always put a little comment in the feedback box when I'm grading. Sometimes I'll give you guys some kind of overall feedback there, but most of the time everything's going to be in the comments with just a sentence or two in the feedback box. So please make sure that you take a look at the comments there. So some things that came up as I've been giving feedback on these so far. And this is just kind of a quick little list of things I jotted down while I was working through. Some of them just small issues. First of all, anytime you're listing the name of a magazine, a newspaper, a book, that name should be italicized. When you're talking about a particular article or a short story or a poem, something that's a piece of a larger work, that information would go in quotation marks. As much as you can, let's try to work on staying in third person for academic writing. In your journals and everything, I want you to use first person, absolutely. But in academic writing, most of the time, you're going to want to use third person. And especially when you're working on these ad evaluation essays, I see a lot of you using you when you're talking about the audience, and remember that your reader may not necessarily be the intended audience of the ad. So, it's like when you want to buy blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe I never want to buy that. Maybe your reader never does want to buy that. Stay in third person, and instead of, I believe what this ad is trying to say, just say, this ad is, and move it from there. Now, in drafting, I know a lot of times it's easier to get the material down using first person and then go back and clean it up later. Don't limit yourself when you're drafting, but when you go through to revise, to edit, to proofread, that's when you can take out some of those I statements. Your writing just sounds a lot stronger when you just state whatever the point is rather than saying I think or I believe or in my opinion or something like that. If I said, well, in my opinion, I think that you ought to avoid using first person versus you should avoid using first person. Which one of those is more direct and sounds more sure? The second one. So work on getting rid of first and second person where you can in your writing and staying in third person. I'm not saying that you always need to do it, but for the most part, it's good practice. Another thing I'm seeing is in some cases not really precise wording. So make sure that what you are stating is very precise. So for instance, I think I touched on this in last week's video. Don't just say, oh, there's a person in the ad. Tell us what that person looks like. When you say it or this, make sure that it's clear what it is, what the antecedent is for that pronoun. If you say this, you should have a word following this to tell us what this is, so this idea, this advertisement, this concept. So keep that in mind. I saw that a few of you got really focused on describing the product and didn't talk about the ad. Remember that the point of this is to fully describe the ad. We're not just talking about the product. In the analysis portion, there was some question about audience for some of you, and a lot of times it did turn into that, oh, this ad is directed toward women, or this ad is directed toward men. Who specifically is being targeted? Even in a limited demographic, parents of newborns, what subset of that group are they trying to target? So try to hone in as much as you can and provide evidence for why you believe that is the audience for this advertisement that you're working with. Also, in your analysis, stay focused on the ad. I sometimes will get statements from students like, oh, the ad is successful because people buy the product. And let's stay focused on the ad. First of all, what makes this a successful ad? And, the ad isn't successful because people buy the product. People may be buying the product because the ad is successful. So stay focused on what you see in the ad and make your determination of whether that advertisement is successful. I hope that makes sense. So from here, we're going to add an introduction and a conclusion. So we're doing what I sometimes call writing from the inside out, where you create the body of the essay first, and then you're going to want to create an introduction with a thesis statement and a conclusion. So for this essay, I'm going to start with the conclusion, then back it up. I'm going to do a lot of things out of order this way, but I promise there's a method to the madness. So with your conclusion, the conclusion here is your evaluation paragraph. You summing this up. Is the ad successful? Why or why not? So you're basically summing up what you've said throughout the essay, which is what we typically do in a conclusion, right? Now, in your introduction, you'll notice when you look at the rubric that the introduction and thesis don't count for much. I think it's 5 points out of this whole essay, okay? Make sure you take a good look at the rubric. That's exactly the rubric that I'm going to use to grade your essay. You'll get a copy of that back when I grade the essay. So, your introduction should, of course, draw the reader in. You should introduce the ad that you're working with, and if you need to take a sentence or two from the beginning of your description, I know some of you got kind of introduction-y with your description, and that's fine. You can take that and move it up. This is all a writing process. You are not limited to keeping everything exactly like it is in your draft, okay? I want you to revise. I want you to move things around. That's okay. So you can move some sentences up to the introduction if that helps. And your thesis statement, thesis statement is the main idea of your essay. It sums up what your essay is about. This assignment asks you to evaluate this ad, whether it successfully reaches its audience. It's pretty easy to create a thesis statement answering that question. The ad successfully reaches its audience because, or the ad does not reach its target audience because. And then you can kind of look at the categories that you analyzed, the categories of analysis you used. So is it that it was placed in the wrong kind of magazine? Is it that it works because it's really eye-catching or it's humorous or something like that? So look at what you've written in the body of the essay and let that help you create your thesis statement and your introduction. I hope that makes sense. So there were a few other things. There were some run-on sentence issues and some sentence fragment issues. I'm going to post a separate video to address some of those things. I'm going to try my hand at Collaborate again and see if it will hold up and not go all funky on me like it did last time, the sort of alien 1980s music video thing we had going on. So I'll tackle that in run-ons and sentence fragments in another video. And we'll be talking about some punctuation issues. I know that I saw some issues in the stage 1 drafts, and a lot of you talked about punctuation, grammar, sentence structure in your introductory journals, which I'm also still grading, but I'll get them back to you soon, I promise. So I'll make a few supplementary videos about that. So in the meantime, if you have questions about any particular concepts, please let me know. Send me an email or drop it in a checkpoint, and I will do my best to get it explained in a video. Don't stress yourself out about the introduction and conclusion too much. We'll talk about those kinds of paragraphs in a lot more detail as we move throughout the semester. So I hope everything's going well this week. Let me know if you need any help, and hopefully this will be a less eventful week than last week, right? All right, take care.